Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Engineering Roundtable. Today, we'll be chatting about finding a new job in tech. My name is Jiaqi Liu. I am one of the leadership fellows for Women Who Code this year, and I'm very excited to be joined by our panelists. And thank you, Warby Parker, for putting together this panel for us. I'm going to start off and asking each of our panelists to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing. Um, Alex, why don't you kick us off?
Sure. Right before this, we asked about intros because I'm really bad at introducing myself, but I'm Alex. I am a software engineer at Warby Parker. For those who are unfamiliar, we are a company focused on helping people see. So I think Warby Parker is probably most famous for pioneering kind of direct-to-consumer e-commerce shopping model. And we really think about how can we make eyewear affordable for everyone. So I've been there about 2 years now. I'm really excited to chat with folks here. I talked with someone, Jiaqi, on your guys' team at Women Who Code a couple of weeks ago about careers. So I'm excited to just see people live and see what questions people have.
Awesome. Savannah, would you like to introduce yourself next?
Sure. My name is Savannah. I work at Snapchat. A parent company is called Snap, and I have been there for about 4 years. I am a security engineer, so I spend time building tools and reviewing code to make sure that our applications, both internal applications and external facing products, are secure.
Wonderful. Amanda, tell us about yourself.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda. I am a senior software engineer at Zip, which is a buy now, pay later company. I'm sure if you're in New York, you've definitely seen us in Times Square, lots of advertising, that nice purple Z everywhere. I'm also the chair of our US DEI team, and I've been around for about 2 years now. So, yep.
Okay, you all have really cool sounding jobs. And to kick us off, tell us about how you ended up in your current role. Savannah, why don't you start off?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a security engineer now on the application security team at Snapchat. So we have a very product-facing role. And I started out in the company as a security technical program manager, specifically working on our security awareness and education program. And so a little bit of background about me, I studied cognitive science in college, so it was a little bit of mix of everything. It was a mix of psychology, linguistics, neuroscience, and computer science. So that's when I started taking computer science classes, but I wasn't sure that it was for me. So when I got the opportunity to work at Snap in this security awareness, sort of technical, but sort of program focused role, I jumped at it. It seemed like a very interesting job. And to me, security is like absolutely critical to the functioning of tech companies. It's like really important that we don't leak everyone's data and behave inappropriately. But it wasn't quite technical enough for me. So when I was in the role for about a year, I saw the engineering roles and I thought, I think I can definitely do that. I have just enough engineering background. So I sort of convinced them to let me try it out. I elbowed my way into the role that I'm in now. And then I've been happily on the security engineering team for about 2 or 3 years.
Very cool. Amanda, what about yourself? How did you end up in your role?
Yeah, so I took a very non-traditional path into software engineering. My degree is actually in French literature. I have a minor in physics, which is where I started taking computer science classes, but it wasn't my main focus at the time. So I went about my life and eventually I decided that I'd fallen out of love with what I was doing. And I decided to go to a boot camp and change my career around, or switch my career, change my life around. And I worked my butt off for 3 months and managed to meet so many wonderful people who were also in the same place, changing their lives, deciding to pursue something new. And I was lucky enough to I was lucky enough and I worked hard enough to be able to find opportunities for me to jump into software engineering, and I've never looked back. So it's been really exciting.
Cool. Yeah, it's always great to have, the perspective of people who come from very different backgrounds as well. I'm really excited about that in the tech industry, is that you get to run across people who have very interesting previous roles and previous lives. Alex, tell us about how you ended up at Warby Parker.
Yeah, it was so interesting to hear that Savannah started as a program manager, because I also started at Warby as a PM. My career has mostly been in product management, and I rarely meet people that go that way. A lot of people go the other way, so that's really cool. But yeah, I started at Warby as a product manager in very beginning of 2020. And it was actually the second time I'd interviewed with them. So I had first interviewed for product role in like 2017, maybe, and didn't end up getting an offer, but had a really good conversation with like the interviewing team and the hiring manager. And then I ended up going to work at a much smaller startup as a product engineer. So mostly coding, mostly engineering, but it was such a small team. There was a lot of like product mindset and focus as well. And then at the end of like 2019, before I joined Warby Parker, the hiring manager who had originally interviewed me reached out and was like, hey, we have another product role open on our team. Like we chatted a couple of years ago, would love to see if this is something that you'd be interested in. And I definitely was. It was really good timing. Yeah, so that was how I first joined the company, and really loved the team I was working with, not just our smaller team, but kind of larger tech org, and the company, the mission, the product. But after a few months, I realized I missed coding every day after I got to do that, from going to like years as a PM and then like 2 years just doing software engineering and then back to a PM. I was like, I didn't realize how much that I have like changed out of this kind of lifestyle, because the day-to-day work is so different. And I brought it up with my manager, and he was so supportive. I talked to some of our teammates, people I worked with, engineers, to get their perspectives on, like, what is an engineering culture like? How is it different from what I see as a PM every day? I spoke with our director of engineering, who's since left, but we still have a really close relationship, and he was super supportive. And basically, I was kind of like monitoring the engineering roles that were available after I kind of put this out into the world. And when one came up that I was really interested in, interviewed, got a new offer, and then transitioned to another team. So yeah, I think it's all of our stories, just for folks, because I know a lot of people here are either new to tech or looking into tech. But it's really cool to think about when you join a company that you really like, or like looking for companies that you really love. And once you're there, seeing what is the role or space that you are best fitting in. Because I think, for both Savannah and me, we kind of shifted roles within companies. And even on my team, like our PM started on our retail side of the organization. And we have another one of our PMs started as a customer support rep. So there's a lot of opportunity, I think, like when you're in an organization that you really love, to advocate for yourself and talk to people and learn about what their roles are about, and really kind of put that out there. So yeah, that's my Warby story.
That's awesome. I'd love to explore that more. Alex, how do you even start that conversation? If you are looking for a different role within your same org, what advice do you have for people who are interested in something like that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, honestly, is going to depend on your relationship with your manager. I had a really, really supportive manager who I felt comfortable bringing that up to. I know that's not always the case for everyone, but I think a great way to start is just talking to team members, specifically in the roles that you're interested in, and learning, like, asking them, you see my work, or if they don't, talk a little bit about your work, and asking them, like, what do you think the gaps are? What would I need to show, or what skills should I learn to like bridge where I am in my role to kind of what you're doing? And I think people are really helpful in that area, especially if there's like folks that you work with or don't work with. Like you guys are in the same company, so I think people are happy to chat. Same goes if it's outside of your company. But I think the first person I ever mentioned this to was an engineer who we weren't on the same team, but we were friends. And when he was leaving, I was like, I think he was the first person that I told. I was like, Adam, by the way, like this is my this is what I've been thinking about where I want to be next year at Warby. Like, what do you think? And it was really helpful. So finding people that you can have those conversations with, that you feel like they can give you candid feedback about like where you're at and what are the steps that you need to take, I think is helpful.
Cool. Savannah, do you have anything to add to that? I know you also have a similar experience of having moved internally within Snap.
Yeah, I think just to echo what Alex said, it was very important for me to have like a sponsor. I actually had like multiple people on the engineering team who had thought of really small engineering projects that would probably have been more suited to an intern. And I said, hey, I have some extra bandwidth. Like Alex said, I think that these are the skills that I need to learn if I am going to change roles. And I just started doing the work. But luckily, I had those people there who were willing to hand those projects off to me. They ended up being sort of the perfect size for me to get project level experience, as well as sort of prove out that I did have the engineering skills, specifically because it is fairly difficult to go from a program manager or a technical program manager role back into engineering, especially if you didn't like have the engineering first. If no one believes that you were an engineer in the past, then it's a little bit harder to make the switch, but I feel very lucky that I was able to do so with the support of my team and my manager and a couple engineers around the company.
Can I make one more comment? I don't know how many people in the chat are looking for like engineering roles specifically versus like product other roles, but I will say one thing that's really helpful, because somebody asked a question about this of gaining software engineering skills, is just to start like doing projects. So you can find even like classes around like basic web development, like HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and start building websites. And I think for me that was huge because I started like consulting, doing software consulting while I was still a PM, even before my first engineering role, and just started like making things to put on a website. So even if nobody hires you, you can start like building projects and start being able to show like, yes, here, I did the thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Amanda, I'm gonna let you kick us off with our next question, which is what has worked well for you in past job searches?
Yeah, so when I was looking for my very first job, which I'm still in right now, I put myself everywhere. I was on Hired, Vettery, TripleByte, everywhere on LinkedIn, Angel List, and I just was nonstop. I was a little bit over the top potentially, but I worked anywhere from 8 to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week looking for my first job. I was constantly sending out emails to people, trying to connect with people on LinkedIn and create a genuine connection of, hey, I see that, or specific, just to back up for a second, just specifically, I'm very interested in diversity and feminism, forward thinking in companies, and trying to connect with other female engineers, for example, was one way that I tried to engage myself with people who were already at the company. And it actually worked very well for me, and especially finding blog articles written by engineers and posted on the company websites. I would find them, read them, comment on them. And it was a really wonderful way to get my foot in the door and to start these conversations and to make connections, even if I didn't end up working at that company. But yeah, it's just another constant thing is continue to apply to things until you have a countersigned contract. It helps boost your morale. You take every single interview you can, whether or not you're particularly interested in the company. It's good practice, and you never know, something might surprise you along the way. So it's just a matter of going at it, being determined, and I don't know, let it rip.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it was a uphill battle to to get to where you are today, and that's really amazing to have that kind of resilience and perseverance. Follow up on that, Amanda, do you have any stories on highlighting the importance of either networking or being a member of a community like this one?
Yeah, so definitely as part of the boot camp, we also had hiring days where certain companies knew that we were from boot camps and wanted to give us a shot and wanted to come do sort of lightning round speed dating type interviews with us, give us some practice, get our feet wet and whatnot. And some of those actually led to deeper conversations and real interviews and offers even, which was really exciting. So having that network was really important, but obviously you can always find networks elsewhere with Women Who Code, and meetups has always been really exciting or a really great tool for finding other people to talk to. And kind of in the same way that Alex mentioned, where you can have someone talk to you and then you might not have that position right away, but they might reach out back later. And that happened to me as well, where I was actually scheduled to have an on-site interview and then they canceled it last minute and they said, "We're so sorry, we actually filled the position, but we really do like you, so we'd like to keep you in our like little list." And a couple months later, they said, "Another position has opened up. We're not sure if you're taken or not yet, but we wanted to reach out and let you know that we would love to talk to you again." And so just always keeping your options open, making those connections. Not everything has to end with a job. And networking is best done when you don't have to network, if that makes sense. And just creating connections genuinely, naturally, all along the way.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I've also had the experience of, having a on-site schedule and then having it canceled because they filled the position. Savannah, anything you want to add here on what's worked well for you, your experience with networking and community?
Yeah, so I only got my job because I happened to attend RSA, which is a big security conference in San Francisco. I was attending to see a friend. I was mildly interested in security, so I thought it would be fun to stop by. While I was there, I was introduced to someone who knew someone, and while I was walking around meeting different people, I was introduced to a woman who worked at Snapchat, and she was currently looking for an intern. And so we just met up later, had coffee, and tried to see if it would be a good fit. And I kept in contact with her until I was ready, school-wise, like for the timing to work. And then when the internship opened, I interviewed for it and I got the internship. And I wouldn't have got it if I didn't meet her at the conference. So I think it's super important to just echo what Amanda said, not always network when you need it. It was a couple months ahead of time when I was going to be ready for a job or for an internship. And I have another just small anecdote, which is that I have a friend who was recently applying to a company, and he wasn't super certain if he was going to get the position or not. Like, they were a little bit cagey about what level that he was going to come in as. And later he found out that he got the position at the higher level because someone that he had worked with in the past that he didn't even know super well, but he had just worked with in the past, like, advocated for him really hard internally. And so he was able to get that sort of good positioned dream job because of a not random, but like previous friendship that he had built outside of that company. So definitely putting in the time to meet people and talk about what you do. Like, don't just not just talking about like casual social things, but like talking about what you do and why you do it with people who are in the same industry can really come in handy.
Cool. Alex, would you like to weigh in on the same topic?
Sure. I think I have a slightly different perspective, probably because I'm just really, really introverted. And like, I remember early in my career and when I was in college, going to like networking events and just being so awkward. And, you know, like those in-person events where you're supposed to talk to people. And yeah, I was not good at it. But I really like what both of you said. Amanda, I think you said something earlier about just being really intentional about how you build relationships. So I don't always think of like, I don't always think of that as networking, but I really think about, you know, building relationships. I think that for me, when I was job searching, I was very active about reaching out to people at the companies I was most interested in and asking for like 15 minutes to talk about the team, and just being intentional about, I actually do want to learn about what is your experience at this company, and does it actually reflect how great of a company I think it is from looking on it from the outside. I think for what I've gotten really good at is not being afraid to reach out to people without an intro. So I will like kind of in job searches put together my list of the top companies that I would want to work at. For example, when I first interviewed at Warby, it was like, I know I want to work here. They have a really strong mission statement. They're so social impact focused. It just really meshes well with like what I'm looking for. And so I would go on LinkedIn and like look at who's on the team that the available role is open to, and just reach out to someone, not necessarily a hiring manager, but in like a similar role that I would be looking for, to get their honest perspective. And I think, you know, if those conversations go well, where you're genuinely interested in the role, and you know, that person also had a good time chatting with you, a lot of times they'll end up referring you, which is like a very great way to get your foot in the door. I know that for, I think almost all companies, but I'm surely all tech companies, employees get a pretty nice bonus for like referring someone who then gets who then joins the company. So they're also like benefiting from that exchange, if you are a really great candidate and they're able to help refer you into a role. And I do think that getting a referral from somebody who works in an organization can be a really nice way to at least get like a phone screen, whereas not having that, you're maybe less likely to be seen. And I also know that, I'll just put this here because we're in a Women Who Code conference, but I also know that employer referral programs in tech tend to be really unequitable. Like they tend to favor white and Asian men who are already in those roles, because those are the people in their network. So I think any chance that you can get to also be part of that system is really good. If anyone wants to work at Warby, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Cool. There's a question in the chat that I want to address, which is, how do you combat imposter syndrome? Does anyone want to jump in?
I'll jump in. I don't really, maybe jumping in first outs me as having pretty bad imposter syndrome, but I am in a very technical role in a very niche field where subject matter expertise is critical. I'm a security engineer. I do security subject matter expertise things all day. And I didn't study it in college. And I'm not a hacker. Like, I don't have a hacker origin story, which a lot of people in security have. And so oftentimes I get faced with this feeling that I'm not actually the security subject matter expertise. And like, how am I supposed to give advice if I'm not always sure what the right advice to give is? But I think the thing that's helped me through it is taking ownership of my own knowledge. So I've taken 2 outside of work classes to become familiar with the subject matter, which I honestly don't even think was necessary, because you learn so much on the job. Almost no one comes in being a full expert. I ask a lot of questions to my peers. I think the main thing that I've tried to do to ramp up into not feeling like I don't know anything is to not let things that I don't know sort of slip by. So if I'm in a meeting and someone talks about a concept that I don't know what it is, instead of letting that go, I'll like make a note of it and ask about it later, or I'll Google it or try and figure out the answer later. So that's how I sort of like build up my domain knowledge. I see someone in the chat asked, what is imposter syndrome? Imposter syndrome is the nagging feeling that you don't actually know what you're doing, or that you're not sure why you are the one who gets to have the job, right? feel quite confident that out of all the people in the world, I'm the best person to do this job. But ultimately, doesn't matter so much, right? Companies don't do things that are bad for them necessarily. So if you're not a productive worker, they will fire you usually. Not to make people scared, but so that's just to say, if you keep trying your best and you keep doing your best in a job, chances are you're pretty good at it, right? You're doing your work. And so it's really important to come to terms with yourself and your own expertise, but it doesn't always work super well.
Yeah, I'll jump in after that, and just more of those objective facts of, if you're not doing your job, yeah, you probably won't stay around as long as if you were. But the other part of it is that, especially in software engineering and tech positions, there is a very thorough interview process. So they know that this is going to likely be a 6-figure salary that they're going to be dropping on you. They're not going to take it lightly. They're going to vet you. And if you make it through, you have made it through. And that is your piece there. And obviously, imposter syndrome never goes away. And having come from a boot camp and going into my first job, every other day I was like, what have I done? Where am I? How did I get here? Am I really supposed to be here? Is it all luck? And that's the other thing, is some things in life are luck. But for me, I try to keep it in the mindset of, it's not just luck. I worked really hard for this. I went into interviews. I talked about things that I knew. I don't pretend to know things that I don't. I ask questions when I need to, and that just helps me learn more and more all the time. It's not about, do you know absolutely everything? Are you the absolute best person for this right now? It's more of a, can you do this? Are you ready to put in effort? Are you there? Are you present? And just trying to keep that in mind of, you got here for a reason. You got here working hard. If you feel gaps in your abilities, then work on them and just work. And maybe that's not always the best thing. You always feel like there are things you need to work on, but it doesn't hurt, right? And having more learning opportunities, throwing yourself into online courses, or even just asking people for help, asking people, hey, I would like to get better at this. You seem to know what you're doing. Maybe we can spend some time together. Finding mentors and doing that is invaluable. But yeah, it's hard to say, how do you combat imposter syndrome? Because at a certain point, it's something that you kind of just live with, which sounds kind of sad in one way, but it's like all of the rest of your emotions. Sometimes you'll be angry, sometimes you'll be sad, sometimes you'll be happy, and you live with all of that. You take it as it comes. Some days that imposter monster will be gigantic, and sometimes it'll be pocket sized. You can just have it on your little shoulder and just say, not right now, I'm busy, and keep going like that. Yeah.
Cool. I want to move on to our next question in the interest of time, because we haven't talked about this yet, but how do you all prepare for technical interviews? I think someone earlier on had asked, how do you balance preparing for a job search with the full-time job? And then on top of that, how do you build resilience in the interview process? Alex, do you want to kick us off on this?
Sure. I honestly have only ever done one technical interview. So I'm sorry, guys, which was when I interviewed at Warby. When I did my startup one, I just did a project. I guess that's similar. But I think for me, as a person who does interview people, and also thinking about like interviews I did as a PM, a couple of things that I feel like I really value and really would try to think about if I were doing this again is like, one, being honest and humble about your mistakes. I think we just spoke about imposter syndrome, but nobody knows what they're doing. Like if you talk to people at the highest levels, like they're also very clueless. And I think the people that I love working with the most are like very humble and honest about what you know versus what you don't know. And I think sometimes in interviews, it can feel compelling to kind of project more than you know, or if you don't know something, try to fudge past it. But I think being candid about when you don't know something is actually really to your advantage. So a lot of times for technical interviews, interviews will pose you a question and then expect you to ask them questions about it. And the way that you ask questions will show them, how do you think about a problem? How do you think about solving it? And if they say, mention like an acronym that you don't know, or a, whatever it might be, just be like, oh, I'm not familiar with XYZ, and they'll explain it. And I think this is definitely like something that people are anticipating, like candidates to do during the interview. So just asking a lot of questions, being honest when you don't know something, because when you're honest about that, the interviewer can then see, oh, how quickly are they going to learn when I tell them what this is? Are they going to be able to get across the next step? And then I think the other thing that's helpful, I don't know if everyone learns this, we used to do this in PM interviews, is like preparing stories, like a couple stories that you think demonstrate really well your ability to maybe communicate with others, maybe a project that didn't work and what you learned from it. And I think choosing stories where you're really integral to the story, like you led an effort, you took some decisive action, and where you're able to articulate, what did you learn from that experience and how has it changed or impacted how you behave moving forward. I think those stories are really impactful, and you can kind of prepare those in advance and use them for different types of questions. I think there's an acronym for this too that I'm not remembering, but it's like a situation, action, result. But thinking about how do you tell stories where you can describe, okay, this is what happened, this is what I did, this was the result. And then for me, I really like after that to listen or hear, like how did I integrate that result or that learning into a process or how I communicate? I hope that's helpful.
Awesome. Yeah, it's not just technical interviews, right? There's also the behavior part that is very important.
Yeah, it's STAR. Yes, Evie, thank you. I was going to say STARS, which would have been so wrong. So yes, STAR. Thank you.
Cool. Savannah, any advice for the group on how to prepare for technical interviews?
I think Alex covered a lot of the excellent advice. I think the other thing that I did when I was preparing for technical interviews was do a lot of interviews. Like, I know it's kind of gated by how many jobs will hand you an interview, but only applying to jobs that you think you want to take limits yourself. If you apply to all the jobs within reason that have an open position, then you might get handed technical interviews that you don't actually really want the job for. And then you get that practice under your belt doing the technical interview in a situation where you sort of have a little bit more of a relaxed situation because you don't necessarily feel that excited about the role. And then you get the practice. So having the ability to do the practice is critical. I know it can be hard if you're not getting that many interviews. And in that case, I would say, ask a friend to do a little practice session with you. Get someone to ask you the LeetCode medium questions or the code questions, and just try to do it in a situation where you have to talk out loud. Because if you're only doing it in your mind up until the moment you have to do it out loud, it can be very, very difficult.
Yeah, Alex and Savannah have already covered pretty much everything that I was thinking about, but another thing that I would add is that, oh my goodness, just lost my train of thought. Amazing. What was I going to add to this? And how to build up resiliency. Wow, that's great. This is awesome. So, oh my goodness. Wow. Okay.
It's hard to listen. It's hard to listen and think and remember what you're going to say.
I just agree with everything so strongly in my head. Yes, I feel that that sort of thing. But yeah, no, I definitely huge +1 on applying to every job that you can find. If it's not something that you absolutely hate, just go for it. If you hate it, maybe just let it go off to the side. But it's that continued practice. And again, you might be surprised by what you find. Sometimes you might not be interested in a job, but the more you talk to the people and the more you interview with the employees, you might say, actually, this could be the right place for me. And taking that approach and saying, here I am, going to do my best. If it doesn't work out, that's okay. And having that mindset multiple times starts to kick in when it does matter to you, and saying, you know, this is what I want and this is what I've done, and here's how I'm going to keep going for that.
Cool. There's a ton of really awesome questions in the comments section. Let's answer one of them. How to make the best use of virtual career fairs? What advice would you give to people attending such career fairs? Anyone feel free to jump in.
This isn't career fair specific, but I'll make the relationship. I wanted to counter argument the applying to any job that you think you could fit. I've never done this, so I can't say from perspective that it doesn't work. It's very likely that it does. I think for me, because I feel like I have a really specific set of criteria that I'm looking for in a role. Like, I really want to work with people of color. I really want to work at a company that is doing something that I believe in, and I really want to work on a company that cares about social equity. I feel like that limits my pool of choices a lot, and also I feel like I prefer smaller organizations to really I know I don't want to work at a company that's has huge teams where I'm working on something very specific. So I think because I have that, it's been helpful to narrow down and focus on the companies that match that. So for career fairs, I think what's really helpful is understanding what your own criteria is and kind of prioritizing the companies that are going to be present, or who you can talk to based off of how well they match your own kind of interests and passions. The benefit of that, I think, is when you do have those conversations with people, it's very clear why you're passionate about the company and why you're a good fit for that role, because you're you've done a lot of thinking around why do I want to be there? And because I'm so passionate about wanting to be here, you should also want me there. So that is and I think another way to think about it, but rather than kind of applying to a wide array of roles, I do think there's a lot of benefit in getting interview practice. But yeah, another way to think about, I think, kind of narrowing down how you want to focus your time at career fairs or in your job search in general.
I just want to hop in here and echo that really emphatically for the time that you are spending at career fairs. As someone who goes to career fairs on the other side of things, the people that often stand out are the people who know about the company, know about the roles that they're interested in. The thing that's sort of hardest to hear and navigate and start a conversation about is when you hear someone say, "Oh, I don't really know, I could do anything." You're like, well, we have a few roles open, there's infinite jobs that you could do. It's sort of hard to engage with that. So if you really know who you are and what you are interested in when you're trying to build relationships with people at things like career fairs or conferences, then that gives the person that you're talking with an idea of how to get you what you want. If you don't know what you're asking for, then it's hard for them to give you what you want, like a recommended role or a recommended application sort of flow. So I definitely think having a clear idea of who you are and what you're asking for at those things is crucial.
Cool. I have one more question I want to touch upon today, which is, let's fast forward to you've done your interview, you've gotten an offer, you have to negotiate, right? Everyone says you have to negotiate. So what are you thinking through the negotiation process? What are some things you can negotiate, beyond just salary? Feel free to jump in.
So one thing that I really appreciated about the bootcamp that I went to, which is Codesmith. Sorry to everyone, I can't figure out how to write in the public chat, but if you connect with me on LinkedIn, you can ask me all your questions later and I promise I'll respond. But they were very adamant about advocating for yourself, asking for that raise, asking for a sign-on bonus, making sure that your voice is being heard. And it's kind of like a test, a political game of, will they respect me before I come into the role, how much are they willing to compensate me for my efforts, and kind of playing around with your value, because obviously that's something that's always changing in the market and whatnot. But being able to say, what can you do for me? And can I have a sign-on bonus? Can I have a raise? And just going from it from the start is really important. I think it also is very, very difficult to do and makes me shake all over, but it's very important to be able to advocate for yourself. And it's a really good exercise even for yourself.
Alex, I saw you unmute earlier.
Yeah, yes, completely agree. Everyone should negotiate. I think people expect you to negotiate. Also, I really feel like everything is on the table. A lot of times, depending on the size of the company that you work at, but at a smaller company, you might not be getting Google pay salary, but you can get a significant chunk of equity. Like you're never going to get 1% of Google, but you could feasibly get, 0.5% or 1% of a startup, depending on what employee you are. And if you really believe in that company and build it out, that is a great way to kind of, make a financial investment using your time rather than capital. So that's definitely one. I think now with remote, there's a lot of flexibility too in kind of negotiating. Do I want to be someone that comes into the office? Do I want kind of like have some time remote? Bringing those conversations up, I think, is really helpful, given that employers are more flexible now with their remote policies. And I also think knowing kind of what to expect. So I think my favorite site right now for salary transparency is levels.fyi. And you can go on there, you can search salaries by company, by region, etc. And just getting a sense of like what is available and kind of what the benchmark is. I think people who are new in tech like are really not aware of how much money there is for tech employees, because you're at the end of the day like providing a very, very valuable service for the company, and tech talent is still in more demand than there is supply. So I think having confidence in the fact that you are doing something that only you can do, and no matter how many times people will say that everyone's replaceable, you're offering something unique, is really helpful. But I think looking at salaries is a helpful way for me to feel confident in like, oh, I didn't realize that this is what the numbers are. So that's a good one to check out as well.
I think earlier we had a question for Amanda on how do you justify asking for a signing bonus?
Yeah, so it could be something as nice as saying, I've got some other offers on the table. This is one of the lower ones. What can you do to make this more appealing, sort of, and saying, or even if you don't have other offers on the table, which is also why it's important to go to as many interviews as you can and get as much information as you can. If the salary that they are offering is on the lower end, then you can say, I know this is on the lower end. How can you compensate me? Because when it comes down to it, again, like Alex said, there's a lot of money in tech, and you want to make sure you're not leaving anything on the table. And especially here, as like Women Who Code advocates for everyone, but being a woman, being a person of color, being any sort of underrepresented person in tech, there are lots of discrepancies. And so part of that is fighting for yourself and saying, here I am, this is why you should take me, I am valuable. And how are you going to also acknowledge how valuable I am? So.
Amazing. Go ahead, Alex.
I was going to say one more thing that Amanda reminded me of. I wouldn't do this if you're interviewing at a new role, but like Savannah and me transitioned within our companies. I've also asked male coworkers what their salaries are. And a lot of times, if it's somebody who's an ally who you're comfortable with, they'll be transparent with you. And I think that has been a way for me to like kind of record set with like, what am I being offered versus somebody who's doing something similar, or maybe we're in the same role, and kind of gut check against, is there something that I need to compensate for in skill set, or should I just be bringing this back to the table?
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great thing to call out. Savannah, no pressure, but we are coming to an end here. Any parting thoughts for community members who are on the hunt for new jobs?
I think my only thought about right now is that it is a wonderful time to try and get a role in tech. There are lots of opportunities all across the board. I'll just plug, we have a program at Snap called the Snap Up Apprentice Program. I also can't post in the chat. Maybe I'll put it in the private chat and we can cross it over. But it's a really good place for someone who maybe doesn't have like a ton of experience and is looking to get placed on several different engineering teams. It's more of an apprenticeship than an internship. So it is for people who've already graduated college. And so that's a really cool program. And yeah, I hope everyone takes some action from the conference today.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining us. If you have further questions, please don't hesitate to connect with any of us on LinkedIn or with WWCode. And happy to continue the conversation offline.
Before everyone leaves, I also wanted to plug, we're also hiring. Just check out our website, it's warbyparker.com/jobs. There's a lot of engineering roles. There are also like tech engineering adjacent for folks who are interested in UI. I know there were some comments, design product, but yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, in that case, Zip is also hiring, and especially if you need designers and you want to come work with me, then please feel free to shoot me a message.
Thank you, everyone.